Hi, my name's Clare E. Potter, and I'm a poet from South Wales via Louisiana, and today Cyfarthfa Park in windy Merthyr. I noticed during lockdown, initially there was kind of this drive for everybody to upload things and to be creating, and that froze me a little bit. And this poem is about that. And Will Lawton, the composer and musician, made a lockdown album called Salt of the Earth and of poetry and music, and I feel really blessed that this poem is on that album. Unmade. I'm in fight and flight with my poetry. Everyone's uploading incredible acts of creativity. Not me. My work scribbled at dawn on pages spread all over my unmade bed. A good burial. A layer of papers to protect my muses. My words settling around me, quietly. The way I've been holding my children. These poems are holding me. And I've turned to two things during this strange time, and it's nature, like many of us, and also my grandmother, who died 15 years ago, and she was quite a tour de force. And this poem, I'm trying to, I suppose, kind of imbibe some of what was strong about my grandmother. And it's called Taking It Out. When my grandmother chopped wood, when my grandmother chopped wood split clean, the axe gleamed. When my grandmother chopped, not just for wood, but for the sound, for the chopping sound, I was safe. When my grandmother chopped, swung, heaved hard, when my grandmother chopped wood, everyone went indoors. When my grandmother chopped wood, even the axe understood. So I found it during lockdown, I've returned to two things. One is nature, like most people, and the other is my grandmother, who, as I said, died 15 years ago. So this poem is about returning, the desire to return to her garden, which was an oasis for me during my childhood. And it's called Still. Stay close to the line. Dolly peg the sheets we squelched in the bath. Hoist up the poles so they blow like ship sails. Turn our vessel to face the sun, our floating island with guzgog bush and horseradish leaves, big enough for umbrellas. Stay on the garden path as I feed slugs to our ferret Rocky, and you talk about the only year the tree had plums. Stay there at the stump of the spruce, which grew bigger than the house after 20 Christmases, being taken in, replanted, taken in, replanted. Stay frozen like the milk out of the bottle, hatchet at your shoulder, poised between up and down, your nylon slippers scorch marked from fire spit. Stay as the sheets thwack and Rocky's jaw schmacks and the aspen leaves shiver. Steady the deck. Tie a rope round me. Keep me on board. Don't go indoors to stoke the fire, peel potatoes, or do the pools. Let's stay where the fruit is underfoot and never, ever eat it. So I found myself walking my daughter. We always walk through the woods to school. And actually, during lockdown, we started to go off the path and started to enjoy the woods a little more. So this poem's called And Nature Goes About Her Business. Like that little child there. And nature goes about her business despite the virus. There's more in the air beneath and on the surface. It's the first spring song in the forest, a busy treetop number, including a raven new to this track. Walking back through these woods after the school drop, blue tits flitting in and out of high notes, and a woodpecker drumming symphatic I want to lean against that tree, feel his rat-a-tat-tat-tat along my spine and in my teeth, for him to make an instrument out of me. It's a jazz wood. The pigeons flapping, squirrels scatting, the song thrush shoo-booby doing, the finch off its limb, so it can be king singer. They all have a part to play. Even my little girl's boot print, perfect in the mud, pointing the other way, the earlier journey we made. I swivel my hips, press my foot in hers, and my heart beats, my spine frets, my every sinew string begin to stir a tune again. And instead of home, I go deeper into wood bone. I was commissioned last year to write some poems for the Wood Lab in Abergavenny, the Cumbernauld project. I had to write about the timber supply chain, and then Dylan Jones, who commissioned me, engraved the poems onto wood. So it feels nice reading this from a piece of wood. It's called "I Remember Who You Are," and I'd written some poems, and he said, "Yeah, they're good, but I think you could do better. I think you need to go and climb a tree." So I did at my age. I didn't get down, but I got up. I remember who you are. You asked me if I'd ever climbed a tree, afraid before I did today. There were things I had to leave on ground. Took off my boots, took in a breath. I did not look down. I found a way, higher than I'd ever been in a tree, a force guiding me to an expectant bough, a safe space to stretch out on. Now I was part of the tree's crown, felt the enormous weight in me slip away as my heart slowed down. For that hour, I was an infant, perfect on my mother's hip. Continuing the theme of trees, there's a Japanese word called Shinrin Yoku, which means forest bathing. So this is a poem about that. Shinrin Yoku. I'm learning to be still. The bark at my back like my mother's palm after bad dreams. This beech tree is teaching me to accept a friendly touch again, recalibrating my nervous system. A cluster of birds singing the leaves to shudder sends a charge of joy down the trunk, fires the impulse to look up. I see the boughs and branches, twigs and leaf tips, sibling to my own brain's dendrites, receivers of messages from sky high. The earth, too, given the mirror of crown to root. Perhaps those twisting filaments are conducting thoughts from the great creator. Or are we more than translator? Am I absorbing and transmitting? I lean in closer. So I had a poetry residency in Abergavenny at Llwyn, which was a house, a medieval house, and it was for the Landmark Trust. And I found that every time I went there in the beginning, I'd sit with the house to my back, looking at the Skirrid Hill. So this is a poem about that. Oh, and I should say as well, the very first day I went for my residency, I had all these bags with me of things I thought I needed, and I fell and cut my hand. So this poem is off the back of that. But I actually realized I didn't need anything, just other than to be in such a beautiful place. Slipping. Each time I visit, I sit on the wall, back to the open door. I'm on the threshold, sit with dabs of blue bottles and flimsy bugs landing on my book. The skirrid is a mouth wailing, rocks like teeth spat out, tumbling. A cut to the heel of my hand, fingers stingy nettled. I suck my hurt, slowing down, allows what's inside to be heard. The door behind me, its great big oh at the news that travels by instinct from the wound to my tongue. And this is a poem called Poems, P-O-A-M-S, which is what my little girl calls poems. Poems. When you were 7, I said I was giving up. You broke from your colouring to ask, what? Give up what, ma'am? Maybe your child's ear needed assurance. I did not mean you. I hadn't realised I'd said it aloud. Oh, poems, writing, trying to juggle all that, that's all. You laid your blue down, deliberate, shifted the tone in your voice so you became my mother that time. Potato in palm, peeler pointing at me, sorting those tears out. Well, you can't give up. You've been doing them poems since you was little. And look now, you got me doing them, and I'm brilliant. Your words were a hoof to my doubt. You let the dust of the kick settle, then picked up your pencil and finished the sky. Some spilled from the page onto the table, the wide sky, which you later filled with birds and other winged creatures. And I'll end with this poem. I was commissioned to work with some artists, David Mackey and Heather Parnell, some years ago, to write a poem for Merthyr. And I sat in one of the furnaces not far from here and talked to lots of people. And the poem's actually now in the Ciarhardy Health Hospital. But Merthyr's a really special place. It's a place of revolution and resistance. It's a place of industry and change and music, and it's a place pulsing with a lot of energy. So this poem is a triptych. It's in 3 parts: the ancient past, the past, and the now. For Merthyr. Before, continents collided, valleys deepened, an uninterrupted line of forests folded and faulted, the settling down of everything. Then a people pressed tight, tempered hymns, sanctified ambitions of good seeds here. Now, look, nothing in a way is lost. Sun shines like molten metal on trees breathing in what we breathe out. Oh, the colours they will paint for us. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Iqbal Malik, and I'm the poet in residence at the Dylan Thomas Birthplace in Swansea. I've been asked by the wonderful Lucy Parkin to do a 15 to 20 minute poetry reading for yourselves at the Abergavenny Writing Festival. So I've got 6 poems. I don't know if this can go under time or over time. I'm hoping that it'll be okay. So some of them are published, some of them aren't. And we'll see how we go. So the first poem I thought I'd read has been published. It was published in, I think this was 2017, in an anthology, but which was a sort of combined poetry anthology between Swansea and Massachusetts. So this poem's called Frontier Folk. With some of my poems, I do like to take a sort of snapshot of a particular period in history, and this one is self-explanatory anyway as we go along, so I hope you enjoy it. Some on the outskirts grappled with God, Frontier folk, fiery as hell. They said they came to preach gospel. Words from way back. Sermons from the gut. You know, old brimstone damnation. Some reckoned even Brother Tom feared them preachers. Wielding the book like madmen. Hysterical. Standing on the mount like Yeshua. They said he could preach too. But this was different. Even the Culduggans came, and their boys did all sorts. Even Billy, little Will, went scalping. Ma said one time he came back with a sackful. Wore 'em like war paint. Said nothing for weeks. But some things you just know, you know? The way he sat there, for days watching the dirt, smiling, staring at them grits, gave us chills just watching. Even Missy knew, and she weren't quite right neither, you know? Maybe that's why they came. I mean, we all watched dirt back then, trying to forget. Truth is, though, you don't. None of us did. Preacher said it's because we left the world behind, out there. I mean, you can bury a man, leave no trace of nothing, and still you know. But no Comanche never shot me, no Navajo neither. See, there was a saying back then, never do nothing by halves, even Billy knew that. And when we left, everything was either half murdered or half dead. And no neckerchief, no buckskin or fancy prairie skirt's gonna change that. No praying neither. At least, that's what Ma said. And she ain't never been wrong. Thank you. So, it's a rather bleak opening. I do tend to write some darker, bleaker stuff, particularly socially. So my job is, by day, is probation officer. And I suppose I've been doing it so long, it's about 16 years now, that inevitably it's sort of permeated into the poetry that I write. An example of that is the next poem I'm going to read, called Jacksville. So Jacksville, obviously I'm brought up in Swansea. I was born in London, but moved to Port Talbot when, I don't know, I must have been about 2-3 years old, so I spent my entire life sort of growing up either in Port Talbot or Swansea. So I've got an affinity to both, and both feature in this particular poem. So obviously a Jack is someone who's from Swansea, and I won't say much more than that. I'll make a few comments afterwards, but as I say, this one's called Jacksville. Welcome to Jacksville, a half-soaked, washed-up hell of a town, shell of a town. The hospital coughing its lungs to chips and fags. The burners across the bay, the stone stacks of Talbot, emaciated and grey like an old Ben gun, bedridden and boned. The steel workhouse, with an iron sun marching its men to war like a stone Caesar in this grim town, tin town. The homeless, ragged as rats counting coin, clinging to the cracks like broken Buddhas, prostrate praying for pence. Marble-eyed boozers and two-bit bums begging for burn, mothballed and medicined. Valley boys off their box on benzos, barbiturates, brown-sugared reefers and PCP. The poor, stamped to their bones by the sycophants, lapdogs, lick-spittles and leeches, prefabricated preachers, Eucharist conmen selling bullshit and bread. The fakery and fuckery of consumer credit, crap cars and cocktail bars where the sick seek solace. Girls on High Street, dragged by their bootstraps like junkies jacked on spice. Winos and smackheads raging through life, screaming at the stars like Cain cursing creation. Caustic shards, self-medicating in the madness. A portent of crows from the Havard to the White Swan, screeching the end of the world to an infinity of souls. staring at themselves through the light of the mind, endless eyes multiplying like dark manifestations of Christ. The prayerless chapels, older than Ovid, disappearing to dust, derelict from pew to pulpit, replaced by tattoo parlours, fast food joints, greasy spoons, chip shops, kebab houses, pawnbrokers, charity shops and sleazy pubs selling drugs to the insane. A mitosis of the mind, replicating itself like a disease. Abstractions moved to faith. Mum's on the red eye, where every day's a stretch, while John's back in the shovel doing 5 for a kilo of crack, with the pickpockets and sneak thieves shouting "fuck the system" at 200 Oystermouth. The mindless game shows spewed into council homes, force-fed gavage, synthetic bullshit on a non-stop merry-go-round. Welcome to Jacksville, a half-soaked, washed-up hell of a town. So like I said, I do write a bit of bleak poetry. So obviously my working life does kind of seep into my poetry. So an example in there obviously would be 200 Oystermouth, which is a reference to Swansea prison, an old Victorian prison. So although it might not be a completely fair reflection of how things are today, I think there's enough of sort of life in there, which does, particularly homelessness, which I see a large prevalence of. Cardiff's particularly bad, but Swansea isn't great, to be honest. So that's Jacksville. The third poem I'm going to read, I get off my phone, I do apologise for that. The third poem I'm going to read is called Dust, and it's one of the poems that I like to sort of combine spirituality, science and God sort of swirling together. So I do like playing with those kind of themes, really. So it's called Dust. They made things holy by turning God to dust. Man meditating on man, then matter. They made things holy by taking a fistful of moonlight and a handful of stars and throwing them skyward. They made things holy by finding a quark, bone crunchingly small, breathing with the mind of God, a speck burning in the embers of creation. They made things holy by watching them move, fermions and neutrons sailing in and out of time. They made things holy by watching apples fall from trees, the earth circumnavigate the sun, and the sun circumnavigate her own heaven of dust and gas, dragging stars across the void. They made things holy by naming the cosmos, and saw that all things were good. And they made things holy by naming things already made, mountains and moons, sea and rain, night and day. They made things holy through angles and maths and geometrical shapes, through churches and temples and mandalas and yantras, spirals ascending upward. They made things holy by watching moonbeams fall from the sky and lightning illuminate the earth. So that is my third poem. I know I'm tight on time. As I say, I'm not actually looking at the watch, which I should be. But anyway, so that's 3. I should be about halfway. I'm probably not, so apologies again if that's the case. So the fourth poem I'm going to read is called Market Day. So I thought I'd just throw in a slightly less bleak kind of theme. This is about all things Welsh, really. Perhaps a hark back to some nostalgic days of old. Obviously, being the poet in residence in the Dylan Thomas house, do get to see the sort of way things were, the way the house looked. Really get a good feel for it. Jeff Hayden, who runs the house, has done an amazing job refurbishing it and putting it back to a period kind of look. So this is one that I think is in keeping with that, and it's called Market Day. It's market day, and the usual faces appear as if conjured from some distant dream. the artisans selling their wares, the fruit stalls and meat stalls spilling with produce from farms and fields, Mrs. Jones eyeing the baklavas, and prime cuts of beef from Di the butcher, salivating at the thought of that first mouthful of Sunday roast. The children pestering their mums for ice creams and trinkets and other edible delights. Stewards puffed like peacocks, strutting in their yard as the prices and pews wonder at the world and how she'd arrived in their small town, permeating their Welsh lives without warning. An old man Cadwallader married to the Lloyds, passing pleasantries with Mr. Davis from number 8, piecing together the politics of their town like two old ladies stuck in time, safe in their little corner of life, already passing them by. And this was Swansea at one time, or every time. You see, here the clocks move slowly, so slowly. Their tick-tock sailing down the hallways, floating past photos on dressers and drawers, already fading as time moves along. The quiet little homes as still as snapshots from old copper plates. The dust forever settling on upright pianos, miners' lamps, love spoons, rocking chairs, fireplaces and old brass pans. For here, in Swansea, everything drifts along, barely awake. Rooms sleeping as the sun catches corners of chairs. Half-open doors and the silent sound of Wales drifts gently back to sleep. So there might be some cliches in there. I hold my hand up to that. Anyway, I enjoyed writing that particular one. Does kind of hark back to a sort of bunch of poems that I was writing at the same time. One of them was about my grandfather in Port Talbot. So yeah, it was a kind of nice sort of trip down into this sort of distant, sort of semi-vague past. Actually, I'll read Grandpa. I'll read that poem. So where is it? Is the question. I think it's in this one. There we are. Okay. So I grew up in Port Talbot. At least my youngest years, I grew up there. Very, very fond memories. I just kind of packed it into this particular poem. I still see your face. Your mustachioed lip and tweed flat cap and walking stick balanced neatly in the hallway. Your checkered floor and chest, familiar friends that welcome me home even now. I remember the Brombill, the walk from Bertha Road through Gross Primary School and up past Avon College. I spent the best days of my life there at yours, letting time tick away, taking turns on the tricycle where Teg and I would tear up the world as only children can. Those days are like a dream now. The painting at the top of the stairs, the Prussian soldier who always stood guard, eyes fixed. He sent chills through me, but I never looked away. I remember picking fruit, walking the neighbour's wall, collecting pears and Bramley apples before bed. They were quiet days, filled with ice cream vans, grazed knees, and adventures that lasted a lifetime. So another little cheeky meander there, I think, down into my childhood. So I'm 44, born in 1976. So, you know, I do remember a certain kind of sort of way things were at that time in Port Talbot. Very, very fond memories, as I said, and then we moved to Swansea, where I've been ever since. And so the last poem I'm going to read is called Bodhi. And I wanted to end on this really because it's about the NHS. And just a brief description of the poem. So the title is short for Bodhisattva, and it comes from the Sanskrit word meaning enlightened being. And I was basically asked to do this poem, to write the poem, I think it was 2018, by Tony Beddoe, who is the chair of the Socialist Health Organisation in Wales. So it was to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the NHS, and given the sort of time we sort of find ourselves in now, and some of the treatment I've had in the past on the NHS, I just think it's a wonderful institution. I think it is at times not just underfunded, but probably quite maligned as well by some quarters. Anyway, so this is the poem I'm going to end on. I hope you've enjoyed the poetry from myself this evening. I wish we could do this as a live event, but obviously we've had to make certain sacrifices. But hope everyone's safe, hope everyone's well, and I hope you enjoy this poem, Bodhi. It took jackboots and jaw to awaken the Bodhi. A hobnailed, bullying, militarised madness of total war. Reckless nihilism. But out of the darkness came the light. Adam, Moses shepherding the weak, recreating life. A minister for health. A Bodhisattva born in the beginnings of the brain and the furnace of war. Protector, preacher for a flock in turmoil. For every Buddha, every Bevan follows the same path, the same struggle, the care of the sick, the infirm, the vulnerable. Call it Dharma, call it love, call it hope, call it the NHS. Refashioning the world from the shards of war, doctors from bullets, nurses from chaos, midwives from death, porters from bombs, hope from despair. Like a sermon from the Tredegar Mount, the National Health Service Act, a book of Genesis, July 5th, 1948. And like all great stories, the end is always nigh. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this year's Abergavenny Writing Festival. My name is Frank Olding. I live in Abergavenny and I write in Welsh and then prepare some translations of my poems. So I'm going to read today some poems from a sequence called Olion, Remains, from my most recent collection. Cwm Sorghum, for John Lilly. Mae'r caiain grin gan frath tachwedd, y gwerni gyr y nentydd swrth yn ysgerbydau gwelw. Mae par o biod hen air yn stelcian yn llwglyd hyd y berth a chymydog draw yn lladd sarn rhedyn. Ond mae llecyn moel ym mhen y bwlch, lle mae pedwar byd yn cwrdd. Byd y meirw, byd y byw, y byd gwyllt a'n byd cyfanedd hwn, a phan fydd cymylau uchel yn carlamu o'r banau tu ar wawr. Yno mae'r gwynt yn llefain o'r de, I stwyria yn esgyrn y mamau yn ei bedd. Ar glawdd llawarch yn y cwm, mae'r ffermwr ffraith yn gyffro oll gan wefr 6 mileniwm o amaeth ar ei dir, ond mae wynt yn ei ddwrn, ac ymylon ei amrannau'n goch gan wenwyn oes o drochi defaid. The fields are sere. November bites. Alders along the sluggish streams are pale, skeletal. A pair of magpies disproving proverbs stalk the hedgerow hungry, and a neighbour cuts bracken bedding. But at the head of the pass, there is a bare place, a place where 4 worlds meet, the worlds of the living and the dead, the wild world, and our settled landscape. And when high clouds canter from the beacons to the dawn, there the wind weeps in the south, stirring the bones of their mothers in their tomb. In the valley, on Llawarch's dyke, the eloquent farmer is all excitement with the thrill of 6 millennia of farming on his land. But his breath is laboured, his eyes rimmed red, poisoned by a lifetime dipping sheep. Casglu, gathering. Rwy'n dal i gasglu iorwg a chelyn, am calon yn tirioni o hyd wrth ei tlysau coch a'i dail glaswyrdd. Mae gennyf eto fy hoff lecynnau, y pant bach ger y betws, y berth drwchus uwch ben blaen awe. Dod ar gwelltir tŷ o'r nod am hwni, y cread noeth, yn fendith ymherfedd y gaiaf o gwmpas y tân. Nodir wawr, y saif yr hael yn stond rhwng llonyddwch a distawrwydd, a'r celyn yn frenin ar y byd o hyd. I still gather ivy and holly. My heart still stirs for scarlet jewels and blue-green leaves. I still have my favourite places, the little hollow at Betws, the dense thicket above Blaenawe. The point is still to bring the wild home, for all I know. Naked creation, a blessing in the depths of winter by the hearth, marking the dawn when the sun stands still between tranquility and silence, and holly, still the king of all. Y mamau, the mothers. Cawn gwrso eu cysgodion a chwilio am eu henwau cyfrin ar allorau treiliedig. Cawn bori trwy rhyw gyfnodolion sych a olygwyd gan brwsiaid moel o ysgolheigion cyn chwalu'r byd. Cawn ddysgu ynganu'n fanwl gywir, lafariaid byr, breuddwydion epenthetig a rhithiau metathesis. Cawn olrhain nentydd troellog ar ei hyd yw llygad cudd i fesur beddrod llanc o arwr a'i gael weithiau'n 6 a gweithiau'n 9 a gweithiau'n 12 o droedfeddi, et ego solos probavi. Cawn ei hela trwy'r llyfgelloedd mewn neuaddau rhynllyd ag ystafelloedd cefn tafarndau. Cyn dychwelyd i'r man cychwyn mewn glyn coedio gan yr haf, a drychiolaeth wyb ar gul y llygad. We can chase their shadows and seek their mystic names on eroded altars. We can browse dry journals edited by bald Prussian scholars before the world was smashed. We can learn precise pronunciation of short vowels in epenthetic dreams and illusions of metathesis. We can follow winding streams and trace their hidden source to measure the tomb of a youthful hero and find it sometimes 6 and sometimes 9 and sometimes 12 feet long, et ego solos probavi. We can hunt them through libraries, in drafty halls, back rooms of pubs, before returning to beginnings in a wooded summer hollow and a fleeting vision at the corner of our eye. Blaen y cwm. Adenydd arian yn sefyll ar y gwynt cyn plymio a chelchu uwch ein pennau, uwch ben llechen lân yr eira mawr. Ei fflach glaerwen yn boen i'r llygaid, yn tarfu ar ein difaterwch a'r bedwn torri, dan bwysau glendid. Silver wings hover on the wind before diving, swooping over us over the fresh start of heavy snow. Their dazzling flash is painful on the eye, perturbs indifference, and birch trees break with the weight of purity. Pabiau, poppies. Anghofiais ei gwasgu'n ddiogel yng nghoflaid y brenhinoedd, rhwng y delwau cerfiedig a gwellhad y swp o ffigys. Gwelet yn ei gweddi bengam gur a dagrau'r gweddwon, doluriau'r blynyddoedd milain. Yw sgarlad wywon frown a'i glesni'n felyn, gallaf weld o hyd ei rhwysg a'i swai hyd glawdd yn swydd y mwythig. Caret wastad a'i prydferthwch, gan gasau o hyd y celwydd, yr hen symbolau sy'n drech na'r gwir. ac mo llipa eu petalau rhwng dalenau myth, galla weld o hyd dy lygaid craff yr haf hwnnw yn swydd amwythig. I forgot pressing them safe in the embrace of kings, between graven images and the cure in a lump of figs. In their nodding prayers, you saw the grief of widows and their tears, the wounds of vicious years. Despite the fade of scarlet to brown, of green to yellow, I still see their pomp and sway along a bank in Shropshire. You loved their beauty, but hated too their lies, old symbols, mightier than truth. Despite the petals wilted between the pages of a myth, I still see your clear eyes one summer in Shropshire. Meini, stones. Y meini'n wyllt, at ei hanner yn y marchwell bras, yn cadw gwyl ymhlith yr yd, wedi claddu dan y borfa ac ynghel dan ddraen coedlanau, yn wyrth aflonydd. Ei lliwiau, ei patrymau, patina di ag oren, cen a mwsog, dieithrwch ffurfiau cnawdol, pob hollt a rhych, yn hyd anhydryn. The stones are wild, half covered by the couch grass, sentinels among the corn, buried under turf and overgrown in copses, a disquieting miracle. Their colouring and pattern, black and orange, patina of lichen and moss, strange carnal forms of every cleft and furrow, an untamed spell. Rhwng rhyfeloedd hafau maith yn ôl, cerddasom trwy fwlch bach o gwm lle safau meini geirwon yn rhodfa fesul par. O'n blaenau ar y gorwel, swatiau twmpath, anferth, gwyrdd, a'r wawr yn gawr o gysgod dros o pwll a'r helig yn y pant. Trwy'r draen a'r perthi, cordeddau cwlwm cythrael i ddilyn hint yr hael, a'n hysfa fwyaf tair oedd datrys rhyngom yna'n serch, bob rhyw ddirgelwch. Between two wars, many summers since, we walked a narrow valley pass where rough stones stood in pairs. A mile away, towards the skyline, a vast green mound squatted, and dawn cast giant shadows over pool and willow in the dip. Through briars and hedges, convolvulus spiraled, following the sun, and our fervent wish was solving in our love all mysteries like this. Daethom yn helwyr meini, am ei cen air, ei cyneddfau, a throes ein hantur fawr, ein helfa wyll dros ros a bron, hyd arfordiroedd unig, a rhwng rhychau'r tiroedd coch, yn chwedl arall fydol, yn freuddwyd fyw symudliw, ac oedd thrysorau hi, creasom wyrth. We became hunters of stones, for their golden lichen and their innate virtues, and our great adventure, our wild hunt over heath and hill, along empty coastlines, among the furrows of ploughed fields, became an otherworldly quest, a living iridescent dream, and from its treasures we, in turn, made wonders. Angharad. This is a poem in memory of Roger Cecil, the artist from Abergavenny, who died a few years ago. Dyrchafu fy llygaid yn yr uffer newydd hon, ar olaf yn fy llinach hir o weision y cedyrn, yn syllu'n fyd yn fy nryswch am cywilydd. I lift my eyes in this new hell, the last of my line of servants to the mighty, staring dumb in my shame, my confusion. Ond bu minnau'n was i'r awen yn ei rhithiau symudliw, yn slent y cyrff mewn corwent, yng ngwagter yr eira'r sgwario ysgwyddau rhag yr heth. Bum yn driw i lyfnder hir ei bryniau, a'i gorwelion clir, yn ffyddlon I ddiffygion pob deunydd, yn brydd, yn lyd, yn olew, yn enaid, cnawd a chysgod. Bym yn deyrngar i'w thywyllwch, I nefoedd haiarn chwefror ag ystlys fain yr haf, ac yn ei rhithiau symudliw, bu hithau'n driw I mi. But I was servant to the muse in all her iridescent forms, in the slant of bodies in the gale, the emptiness of snow, the squaring of shoulders against the cold. I remained true to the long sweep of her hills and clear horizons, faithful to deficiencies of all materials, soil, glue, oil, soul, flesh, and shadow. I remained true to her darkness, to the iron skies of February and the smooth flank of summer, and she, in all her iridescent forms, was true to me. Anodd gweld llysernau oll a losgant, a'r gair yn troi mor chwil. Anodd siarad ar gwylwyr ar eu clogwyn ia, ond llaw wen, golau gwyn, nodwydd a brath sydyn a minnau'n rhyfedd o ddi hyd ar bennant gofid. Hard to see the lanterns burn, the fortress spins so wild, hard is speech with the watchman on her cliffs of ice, but white hand, white light and needle, sudden pain, and I am strangely heedless on the upland of grief. Ni chaf bellach fod yn driw, ni chai dithau fod yn ffyddlon. Ar ddiwrnod gwyntog y mai, ni chai fy nghesanau glywyn byw, na rhannu breuddwyd dewin gyda'n gilydd ar y wain liw nos. Ni chai grwydro gariad fy nghalon trwy niwl yr haf a'r dyfryniau. Cyhoeddasant a'i damnatio, a defwyno pob prynhawn hudolus, pob noson y tu hwnt I eiriau, pob coflaid ar ein ffordd yn ôl i'r tŷ, ac bellach ni alla fod yn driw, ni elli dithau fod yn ffyddlon. I can stay true no longer. You cannot be faithful. On a windy day in May, you cannot have my butterfly kisses, nor share a shaman's dream together on the moor at night. You cannot wander, love of my heart, through summer mist on your hills. They have issued their damnatio and tainted every magical afternoon, every night beyond words, every kiss on our way home. I can keep faith no longer. You cannot stay true. Cysgu dan y coed, yn sŵn yr adar gwyn ei byd. A dif mewn llanerch yn y golau brith, bym ynghel o dan I rhag y dydd, rhag dies irau y colli pwyll a brath yr heth. A dif ar fi'n y ddôl, bym ynghydd o dani, rhag fy ing, fy hen waradwydd. Am sefyll wastad ar y ffin, dan gysgod cariad. Beneath the trees, I sleep in blessed birdsong. The tree that grows in a clearing's dappled light, I hid beneath her from the day, from the dies irae of losing my mind, the bite of cold. The tree that grows at the meadow's edge, I hid beneath her from my pain, my old shame, for standing always at the edge, in love's shadow. Llynfawr. Llynfawr is a lake up at the Ricos at Hirwain, where in the First World War they discovered massive cauldrons, Celtic bronze cauldrons, full of objects offered to the goddess in the lake. Ar ein cwrcwd ger y lan, fe glywir ein sebrydion yn glir dros y llyn yr ochr draw. A fydd crochan efydd yn llawn o swllt Iwerddon yn nofio cyn suddo, yn rhoi ei drithro ar y dŵr cyn chwalu drych y llyn a ffrwydro I amgenach byd, cyn brochi'n deilchion a thân yn gledd o lyched, yn llaw rhyw lofrydd milain. Crouching at the shore, our whispers carry clear across the lake, the other side. Will a bronze cauldron full of Ireland's treasures float before it sinks? Will it go its 3 times round before shattering the mirror of the lake and exploding into other worlds, before breaching in shards and fire, a sword of lightning in a vicious killer's hand? Agarchasom dros y môr, tu hwnt i'r ynys wydyr, a'i gwarcheidwaid myd. A'i rhad a rhodd naw morwyn, a'i braidd gyffwrdd medrus, yn tai felltith uffern. Per rhoddem y rhain yn ôl i'r pair, dirgelion gwastrodi mairch, holl gyfrinachau crefft y gof a chylchoedd amaeth. Pe gwthiem yn ei hôl i'r pair, a'i cleddau hairn. Aim yn ôl i hedd rhyw ddiniweidrwydd, i ryfeddoed diwair llyn sy'n cario'n lleisiau dros y dŵr. What we sought overseas, beyond the Isle of Glass and her silent watchman, was it the gift and blessing of 9 virgins, their subtle caresses, or the curse of hell? Were we to return them to the cauldron, the mysteries of breaking horses, the secrets of the blacksmith's craft, the cycles of farming? Were we to thrust them back into the cauldron with their iron swords? Would we return to the peace of innocence, the chaste wonder of a lake that carries our whispers over water? Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Joelle Taylor and I'm a poet, author and editor, and I'm absolutely delighted to have been asked to read for Abergavenny Writing Festival. So before I begin the reading, I just want to give a quick shout out to Abergavenny and to the people organising it and to the people organising through the most difficult times in living memory, all the writing festivals, the literature festivals, the music, the theatre, how artists continue to create in spite of all attempts to prevent us. So this gig's for you. Thank you so much for inviting me here. The first book I'm going to read from is Smashing It, which is an incredible anthology of working class artists, writers, filmmakers, theatre practitioners, and it's edited by Sabrina Mahfouz, who is in herself the most extraordinary artist. And she collated this book to look at the experiences of different working class artists throughout the UK as a kind of encouragement to new artists, but also to validate our experiences and to acknowledge the struggles that we have. And I submitted 2 pieces, and this is, I'm going to give you like a little bit of an excerpt from a series of cantos called Gutter Girls. And Gutter Girls was originally commissioned by the Orwell Prize as a response to Down and Out in London and Paris. I had been homeless myself throughout my younger years, throughout university. I was kind of sleeping at other people's houses, and I wanted to look at how women respond to homelessness and how we negotiate it. So I'm just going to read a couple of the stanzas from it. The cantos. Gutter Girls. 1. Poor women. Our bodies are factories. We stand numb lip staring at conveyor belts of beds, passing beneath us a carousel of scribbled sheets, of unwashed mornings, insincere sunsets, red as the lit end of God's cigarette. He's been around here again, but none of the girls will genuflect genitals to him now, and still we stand curbside, the street passing beneath us as we check each walker on for the correct parts. Each bed is a door to a home you do not own. Open it. You are lucky to have this body. Your skin is currency. You are wallet, your body a factory. Men crowd your doorway, desperate for sleep, for a mother to bury themselves in. Your body is cemetery. 2. Poor women, we keep the dark in our mouths, tied up by an old thread of rope. We have swarms of fox building at the back of our throats, wild cats quietly watching you from behind thickets of teeth. Fear us. It is simpler. Poor women swear, and buildings fall in supplication, finally relieved of the need to stand straight, to act like gentlemen. Our mouths are condemned, council estates are canals. Dive into our cold collapse, the gutters of girls. A hand reaches for your ankle, you lucky boy. A torn bicycle, filthy death, water as thick as language. Poor women, we have planning permission for our tongues and build bars and all-you-can-eats and porter cabin bordellos. We have permission to speak, to spit, knowing every banned word is a book in our mouths. We are freeholders of our glass orifices. Poor women, we search for homes like missing children, clung to the shadows cast by tube trains, gripped to the back strap of decommissioned buses, long walking with arms of stretched carrier bag plastic until we flat kick a front door to silence, bite off our bras and whisper the secret names of the storms. 3. And if my body is a house, it is a Soho club. Derelict, 4 a.m, the catchy dark, smoke circles that you can lasso a thin dog with. Anything might happen here. It depends what you're looking for. It depends when you're looking for. Strangers meet in me and admire the wallpaper. Tap tables waiting for a drink their father knew. And that same jazz singer has been caught in the same riff since 1967. There is no leaving when you enter my body. I have you now. You who thought you were taking, I took you, and you are here still, listening to that old jazz just before it ejaculates, the smoke ring around your neck. You're a very good boy, but I guess you know that now. My body is filled with sleeping men, all tucked up tight and waiting for morning. It will never come. My boys, my beautiful boys. 4. Poor women, we carry our own coffins, say we have no use for flowers, love. Weave wreaths of lottery tickets and tick books instead. Plant the seeds caught between our teeth. We build our caskets out of our chipboard bed bases. Crowdfund the cremation. Pick the ceremony from a Littlewoods catalogue play. Now that's what I call funeral music. To the dearly, to the gathered, to the father of the bribed, to the men lined like bitter on a bar. Poor women, we bite the head off the wake, awaken in strangers' beds, a small congregation of pills beside us, white faces raised in mourning, in revelation. There is no death, just less of this. Poor women, we say, this is just how she would have wanted it. No fuss, eyeing the empty, the ashtray eyes, those cigarettes, spirits, the ghosts of brothers. We don't look behind us at the deserted pews. We did not invite God, but someone said they saw him anyway. Little, well-washed boy. He should know better than to turn up today. God is a bailiff. Poor women are born into a death so soft, so fine woven, luxurious, that life is almost worth it. Thank you. Yeah, I hope that came across okay. There's the strangest thing in the world, sitting beneath your bed in your back bedroom, reading poetry that you would normally perform to people live. And it takes a particular kind of courage that I had not expected. So the second piece I'm going to read is from my last collection, which is called Songs My Enemy Taught Me, out on Outspoken Press. And this is a book which details my story of child sexual abuse growing up, how I negotiated that, how I survived it, the things that happened to me. But it's also a book which tries to make connections with women's stories worldwide. So I'm just going to read a bit of my personal story, which is the title piece, Songs My Enemy Taught Me. And we're going to join the story the morning after the first assault. 1. The bed is cold, and my teeth are abandoned buildings, and somewhere there is the smell of something burning, a book, a flag, a letter. In my room at the top of the seaside hotel, there is a single bed with a white sheet. I cannot think of anything to write on it. The bed is a slowly developing photograph. Here's us around the dinner table. We are smiling like carved meat. No one notices that the daughter is eating herself. Here's you, walking home from school. Your shadow walks behind you as if ashamed. Even the trees whisper about you. You have embarrassed the wind. And here's him, and him, and him, a family portrait, successful, double folding their uniforms and ironing their smiles, catching children delivered from the conveyor belt of their wives' wombs and holding them up to the bare light bulb to bless. It's okay. They are boys. And here it's the stairs, and here the long corridor you are afraid to walk along. Perhaps it is your too. My womb is a war zone after everything is taken, after the soldiers have left spitting into the palms of their hands, after the shelves have been emptied and only sell nothing, after the nothing gathers in great mountains at the sides of the streets, after the streets are running with hungry ghosts, after women's skins are slung from washing lines, after children write their names in the dust that once were their fathers, I carry the war in my womb. Perhaps this is what happened. Someone said my hymen was a door behind which rebels were making plans, and they kicked it in, paced the room, and filled their pockets with valuables. My mother's wedding ring, my first tooth, a bright blue hair bubble, your address, this. They wanted to know where I was hidden. I am the corner of the room. I am a crime scene, an invaded land, an oil-rich country. I will be divided equally between nations. 3. 12 years old. There are small bodies washed up on the shores of my eyes. When my photograph is taken, another girl's face appears instead of mine. 4. There are men seated quietly at municipal formica desks at the neck of my womb. You do not look like your face, they say. Please state the purpose of your visit. Did you pack these bags yourself? My sandbag hips, my barbed wire hill. Many will die defending it. Others will drown in the sediment of a trench whose walls are always caving in. My cunt is a bomb crater the villagers gather round the edge of and peer into. Sometimes smoke rises from deep within. These are my ghosts. These are messages in a lost language. Capture them in jars, display them on suburban mantelpieces, in memes, on t-shirts. Smile, be my friendly. Women are crucified on hashtags across these dark hills. 5. The girl whose eyes are shallow graves beneath suburban patios goes to school, and rows of heavy wooden lidded desks are filled with the smiling dead. When the world ended, Nobody noticed. The sun has eaten itself. Skeleton birds mutter bone songs. Her mother and father tell jokes about her. Everybody laughs. The girl whose eyes are foxholes laughs. The teacher laughs. Children gathered like litter around the stairwell laugh. The social worker laughs. The policeman laughs. The doctor laughs. The psychiatrist giggles. The world ends. 6. I remember how silence was a choir. There's you at the back of the class, soprano. There's you walking home, tenor. There's you in the kitchen, vibrato. Your solo silences are everywhere. 7. For Christmas, I give my mother an uncomfortable truth. She wears it when I visit. Thank you. I have no idea if I got those numbers in the correct sequence. I often read different passages out, so apologies if I went from 1 to 8,000 very quickly. Okay, I think I'm probably coming to the end, so I'm going to do a newish one. This is from my new book, which is being published by C.I.C in June 21. The book is called Canto and Other Poems, and this one is called Trauma, the Opera, and it relates to the most magnificent experience of my life, which was publishing Songs My Enemy Taught Me. When I was writing it, I thought I was going to be struck down by some strange god. I thought I would never be able to break the silences that are pounded into it at a very young age. But I did. And not only that, lots of people started listening. And so it enabled me for the first time to be able to travel internationally with my work. And it's literally took me around the world. So that was an amazing experience, but it does also take a kind of toll, telling the same sort of traumatic stories. So what I did was I wrote a response to all of that. And it's called Trauma, the Opera. And for you, my darling, my high priest of pious pornography, poetry, pimp, you may fuck my Soho pink sacred heart. I want to write a book in which I live, a story where the girl gets the girl and the girl is herself, a novel where I return to find a 6-year-old child opening a bedroom door and I shotgun. Don't do that. There is still, stop all that opera. There is still so much to learn. But how do I write? That if war is God's way of teaching Americans geography, then maybe this oh God, oubliette is God's way of teaching woman history. How do I ask her to lift skin, organize, dust, pin back the night, excavate, glue? I know that if you press your ear against my shell, you will hear Bangkok, my Koh San Road, or the itch of moss-side pavements, the call of corner boys slouching with bees in their mouths. Tonight, you will hear reindeer over Rotherham, children, my mother's funeral laugh. You will hear black women teaching, scratching chalk outlines on blackboard, skin unpicking acronyms by candlelight. My shell sings the sirens of Mount Sinjara. My song seduces war. Listen, can you hear a child ticking? The slow dance of bones beside Phnom Penh brothels. My dropped vase, kintsugi cunt, paint all the scars in pound shop glitter girl, are all women inside other women. And how do I write that you are there too, pretty dust girl, curled deep in your cave of remarkable horror, inside yourself, Ouroboros, smiling and no, putting your headphones on, staring into your hands, unscrewing your fists, Every time you open your mouth, a white man jumps out and eats you. If war is God's way of teaching Americans geography, then maybe rape is God's way of teaching women. Woman, how do I write that there is a grave at the grave meeting of my legs, and no one goes there after dark except with nets to catch all these beautiful ghosts, pinning them to novels, pages plucked, bejazzled. And while we're at it, how should I write that I had all your ghost babies? They live together at the edge of the woods and don't write home anymore. Thank you for listening. Lay a wreath where the two roads pleat. Photocopy my photograph, return to me once a year. Tell them a story. Make me live. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a safe, inspiring, and prosperous rest of the year. See you soon. Thank you.